Hey, what's up? So I wanted to make a video about using Astro, Frontmatter CMS, and Visual Studio Code. What else? Azure Static Web Apps. Excuse me, Azure Static Web App to publish a blog or really any website. But the reason I did this was for my website for Greybush Labs and the blog. The blog is really what drove it, though. So I don't want to go too crazy into everything because there's actually really good docs for all these tools I'm about to show you. So the intention here is just to show you how I use them together and to kind of fill in the gaps. There were a couple little issues that I experienced while going through the process. But yeah, so let's get started. We've got Astro. Right? This is a framework that makes dogs shut up. No, I'm kidding. That's Stella. She she loves to talk. So you might hear her in the background of a lot of these. Anyway, Astro is a JavaScript framework for creating statically generated websites or static websites. So what do we mean by static? Well, not dynamic, right? It's fixed. It's basically HTML, JavaScript, CSS. And a lot of the JavaScript is actually processed server side, not really server side, but ahead of time. So it's pre-processed. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute. But yeah, the Astro, like I said, not going to go too deep into any of these tools because they do have such good documentation. So I'll put all the links to all this stuff in the description so you can check them all out. But yeah, Astro is the framework that we're going to be using. So it has some integrations. This is one of the coolest things I think about Astro is you can use it alongside all these other frameworks. So if you've got React or Svelte or Vue or Angular is not on here, but it is one of the integrations. You can use them alongside of each other, which is pretty cool. I didn't choose to use this. I mean, I guess you could, and maybe I will. But for right now, my site is pretty simple. Not a lot of dynamic stuff going on, so this was perfect for me. I don't foresee a lot of that in the future. But if there is, I always could expand easily. So that's Astro. That's our framework. Now we've also got this tool here called Frontmatter CMS. This actually installs right into Visual Studio Code. It's really cool. Normally you'd have to use something like WordPress or something like that. And that means a database and maybe an API to fetch that stuff. Like now you're just talking about more infrastructure. And while that's not necessarily bad, it's a bit much when you're just one person. Right? Say you're like me, you're a developer, maybe wants to do a little side stuff. So you create a website, you have a blog to drive traffic, pretty standard stuff nowadays. So yeah, if you're like me, this might be a good setup for you. My one of my favorite things is it runs right here in Visual Studio Code. So there's a little extension for it. If you want to read about it, again, not going deep into these tools because they do have great documentation. So if you want to see more about Frontmatter and how all that works, and I would definitely recommend checking out their site. But once you got it installed, we're going to have this little tab down here, FMs or Frontmatter. We've got some options. This is pretty cool. It will track your changes and allow you to commit those separately from the rest of your code. You know, obviously you want to, well, maybe not obviously, sorry, that's a crutch of mine because whatever. But, excuse me, it's considered a best practice to make your commits as small as possible and to keep them scoped, right? So you wouldn't want to say commit your newest blog post and an update that like adds a new button to some other page, right? They're two different things. Even if they were like pretty closely related, it's best practice keep them separate, right? Small commits that are super scoped. That way you can pick and choose, right? If you needed to build a release, let's say you needed to cherry pick a bunch of stuff, you would easily be able to do that if you follow this best practice. So yeah, that's pretty cool. They add some other stuff here for you. There's some actions, pretty self-explanatory. We'll show you recent stuff. Again, not going to go too deep on this. Let's go to the dashboard though. And here is where we're probably going to do most of our stuff. So come into the dashboard, you got a create content button. Does what it sounds like. Got some templates. Escape out of there. So far I've only got 2 blog posts. You can see them here, and then we could drill in. This will actually take us there. You can see the bar on the left. This is still Frontmatter content. So it's a little bit of a mix. Again, we've got the Get stuff at the top here. And then we've got some helpful sections. Little summary of your SEO status. Does some checks on a few things. Nice breakdown of content. Right, we've got 7 headings, 25 paragraphs, no internal links, 13 external links, no images. That's weird, it thinks it has no images. Anyway, again, not going to dig too deep in here. We've got actions, metadata. Now this is where I wanted to get to. So this is going to start to show, this will reflect over here. So you can see there's a one-to-one title, mods. If we add stuff here, it adds it there. All right, you can also add it in here. Same thing. Takes a second to update, but you can see it syncs. Yeah, so this is all our Frontmatter. Basically everything in between these 2 tags is considered Frontmatter, and this will be handled by the preprocessor. So this is a markdown file. And other than this Frontmatter stuff, it's just a standard markdown file. And then what happens is this runs through the build of Astro. And then if we take a look at our dist folder here, we'll have like blog, LK5 setup, index HTML. So here is the markup for that page. Let's format, make it a little easier to read. Scroll back up, and we're in the head. So let's scroll down, and here's our first one. We've got our canonical URL. Very important. Title, the meta title, meta description, right? These are kind of standard HTML out of the box stuff. Then we've got our open graph or Facebook model. So this is how the link will get built in Facebook. If you want to give it these things, and that'll get you that nice pretty looking link. Same thing on Twitter here. And this is the cool thing about Astro. So if, say, some new protocol gets introduced, or some new model, whatever, gets introduced, we could just map it to our existing stuff. Say some new site comes along and decides, we want to call it something other than title, whatever. They want to do their own little custom property, meta property here. All we'll have to do is we could either write our own integration, or maybe somebody already did it. But with Astro, the integrations are pretty easy. Like, for example, here's one for Tailwind that I installed. So you can see there's a protocol for adding these in, pretty straightforward. So we could add that in, and then if we needed to, we could add our fields in here. These are all the potential meta fields we could have. So if we needed to add a new one, we could add it in here. Or maybe we just wanted to repurpose it to map it to some new field that would get handled in our integration. Right. So if they wanted to call title, like, let's look at one of the examples here. So like Facebook uses this OG prefix. Let's say some other thing comes along and it's going to be LF. So we would be able to easily generate all of these just like we do with the Open Graph and Twitter ones, and for that matter, the out-of-the-box ones. So that's pretty powerful. If something changed, we could easily just write an integration to handle that. Yeah, so let's see. That's Astro. That's Frontmatter. What else we got? Oh, yeah. We've got these. There is a bit of a database for Frontmatter, but it's minimal. It just uses JSON files. You can see with my two blog posts, I have like nothing in these except some metadata about the images. Everything else is stored in the article itself. Right? Everything else is going to be up here. So you don't need a big database with a bunch of other stuff. Everything's all in here. Again, one of my favorite parts about this, everything is just all in the project. You don't have to be jumping back and forth, different tools, different environments, that kind of thing. It's all in one place. There is an issue I wanted to point out that I had right here on the path. So when you're setting up the folders, when I went into the UI, it gave me a path that it had this workspace in it, which this is, if you don't know, this is an environment variable basically for VS Code. So workspace will turn into this, basically the root folder. So that way everything can be relative. But what I got was something more like this when it started. Right, it would be this guy in here, which is not going to work. Right, it's going to already have the whole path and then this, so that's not going to be a valid path. So just make sure everything's relative to the workspace, and you should be good. Maybe they fixed that bug. I'm not sure, but I definitely had that issue when I started. Let's see, that's everything for Astro and Frontmatter. Yeah, like I said, I didn't want to go deep on those guys because they have great documentation. One other thing I do want to show you real quick about it, though, actually, is here. So this lets you define your schema. So we'll say like title is going to be a string, pub date is a date. So you can see this one's a good example, updated date. It's got an optional on it too. So there is some schema checking here that should throw you warnings and or errors when you are building. So if you don't implement a property, it'll let you know. This was another thing that I really liked. So if you're missing a particular field, you can configure it so that it's going to tell you and it won't build. You'll end up with an error until you fix that. That way you don't have any missing meta tags. Let's see. Yeah, that's it for those guys. We looked at the output. Okay, let's cover the deployment now. So this is hosted in GitHub, and I created a static web app in Azure. And that's where this deploys to. So when you're creating that, they actually walk you through connecting it up to GitHub. So this script right here was mostly generated by the tool. I did have to make a couple of changes. Mostly that was this section here, the environment variables. These might have to change based on what you're doing. So pretty self-explanatory. So on a push to main or a pull request of these types to the main branch, we're going to trigger this. Again, this is the kind of most important area. You want to make sure all these are right. So your application, this is pretty much not going to change. It's going to be slash. If you have an API, they do let you specify that. I'm not going to go into that here because I don't use it. App artifact location. This one's important too. So this is, it says the build output. So dist folder, sometimes it'll be dist slash something. In this case, Astro builds outputs right to the dist folder. So yeah, pretty standard stuff here. We've got just a basic node build and deploy job. So basically what this is going to do is run your npm build script. So like, let's jump over to our package JSON. There's our build script. That's going to run Astro check and Astro build. Now, this is a convention for node projects, so that'll trigger whatever you've got for your build script, and then we're going to deploy. Make sure you've got all your secrets and stuff. You don't want to put those in here. Yeah, so that's it for the deploy. This is pretty straightforward. Yeah, so I'd love to hear your feedback. I said this is the best thing I could find at the time. I started looking, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, so maybe like July and August of 2024. I've been poking around looking at other tools, lightweight CMS and tools for like SEO optimization, and one of the big things I wanted was like validation and like I don't know what the best word for it would be, but like linting maybe, to make sure that things weren't missing, like the kind of thing you're going to get from like these configs, right? We're checking the schema, optional, right? I'm gonna get errors if I don't include things that are not optional. Don't include things that are not optional. Yeah, yeah. I think you guys could follow that. But yeah, I didn't want something that would just, put them in for me. That's easy enough. What I really wanted was the validation, the checking, to make sure that those fields were there. That was something I really wanted. So this really ticks all the boxes for me. It's lightweight. I don't have to leave VS Code. It uses standard tools and best practices. I really can't find any problems with it. But let me know. What do you guys use? Have you had problems with this setup? Maybe you just got some more questions. Hit me up in the comments or hop on Discord. Usually on there. I'd love to talk about what you're doing and do all the things like subscribe. See ya.